Hello everyone and welcome to Education 4.0 is Blended Learning the Future of Education, the latest in a series of roundtable discussions hosted in collaboration between Times Higher Education and Coursera that focuses on higher education in India. My name is Alistair Lawrence, I'm the Special Projects Editor, I'm the chair today, and I'm delighted to be joined by a number of higher education leaders from the region and also my colleague Raghav Gupta, who is Managing Director of India and APAC for Coursera. So I think we'd like to begin by just setting the scene of putting today's discussion in context, in particular the growing relevance towards Industry 4.0 and how that is having a knock-on effect in the curriculum for higher education. Today we'll hopefully explore in part what trends universities are witnessing in the region, how digital transformation can help modernise curricula as part of curricular design and teaching. And again, we'd very much like to gather your perspectives as university leaders on that topic. And also the top challenges that universities are facing to bring in these changes effectively over the course of the coming months and years. So Raghav, if I can hand over to you, I think you can supply an industry perspective and tell us a little more about the work Coursera is doing and what you've noticed so far in terms of overall trends in the region.
Sure, happy to do that, Alistair, and get us started off. Good afternoon, everyone. So, like Alistair said, I work with Coursera. I'm Managing Director for India and Asia. Currently working out of the hills beyond Nainital, which is why you see the wooden background behind me, and been here for the last 10 days or so. The internet is a little unstable, but the views are just tremendous. Shantanu is helping me today by sharing the screen, and I'm dialed into the meeting as well. In case the video drops, I think hopefully the audio will continue to work. I have 7-8 slides. We work with a lot of companies, and I thought it might be interesting just to set the context for the conversation, that as we talk about Education 4.0, and I know, as higher education leaders, I've heard many of you speak about what the industry is looking for. I thought it might be interesting to share Coursera's point of view as well. And I'll use 2 slides just to set context, and then I'll share some of what we are learning when we work with companies in the country as well as around the world. So let's jump in. On the next slide, you'll see this is the Coursera platform, and what I'll share today will come from our learnings from this platform. So there are a very large number of learners on our platform, who come to our retail platform, almost 7.7 crore individuals, and for Alistair's benefit, that's 77 million individuals on our platform. And what they learn comes from, 50 companies, it comes from 150 top universities, and there are almost 40,000 skills that are taught on the Coursera platform. And then we work with institutions as well. Just stay on the previous slide. Yeah. And so we work with businesses, we work with governments, we work with campuses. And I'll focus a little bit today on what we are learning from our work with businesses. And there are so many disciplines that one could talk about, but for the purposes of the next 7-8 minutes, I'll focus a little bit on engineering, to say that when we work with technology companies or companies that might be hiring engineering students, what is it that we are learning from our work as we work with businesses as a part of what we call Coursera for Business. And from a technology standpoint, many IT services companies employ engineers in India. And as a part of our work, these are the top 10 IT services brands in the world globally. And 7 of them are training their employees on the Coursera platform. So other than HCL, NTT, and Samsung, all the others that are mentioned on this slide are training their employees on the Coursera platform. And so we're learning a little bit of how their business is changing, how business at Accenture is changing, at IBM, TCS, how that is changing. And as I share insights, I wanted to set some context on where these insights are coming from. So let's go to the next slide, Shantanu. Now, we are seeing at a global level that there is this double disruption that industry has been talking about. Automation because of technology was already happening, and COVID-19 has accelerated some of that disruption that was happening. And this is a point of view that the World Economic Forum has put out. So, jobs are getting displaced. There are lesser jobs which are available. skills are changing as well. So industry is telling us that the kind of skills that working professionals need have changed quite significantly. Even post-COVID, many people will continue to operate remotely. So I'm currently in the Himalayas, and maybe, even when COVID goes away, offices will reopen, but not 100% like we saw pre-COVID. And then almost all businesses are telling us that they will accelerate digitalization. So they are looking for working professionals who have more digital skills and also data-related skills. And this is something that we keep in mind as we work with the kind of IT services companies that I was mentioning on the previous slide, and many others, that upwards of 2,500 companies that we work with. Now, this is, of course, happening because of COVID, but we were looking at some of the statistics for hiring amongst the top IT services companies in India, even pre-COVID. And on the next slide, we find that some of these shifts were happening pre-COVID as well. And you'll see in the headline that companies like TCS, Infosys, HCL, even pre-COVID, were reducing their hiring. It was down by 20,000 numbers, even in the pre-COVID year. And on the right-hand side, it is percentages as well. And in our work with these companies, they were telling us that instead of hiring large numbers, they want to focus on hiring for the right skills. And these are skills around digital technologies, data science-related skills, and so on and so forth. So while double disruption is, of course, COVID and beyond, we were starting to see some of these trends that were happening even pre-COVID as well. And the other thing which I would like to call out is that companies are telling us that the skills of the future for their working professionals are what they're calling a combination of digital and human skills. And there's a lot of information on this slide, but let me explain this. This might be helpful as we get into the conversation as well. So in the 2019 column, on the Coursera platform, millions and millions of people who come to the Coursera platform, these are the top 10 skills that an employed learner took on the Coursera platform, right? So this is not a student, this is a working professional. And in 2019, top skills you will see were largely around technology usage and development, Python, neural networks, algorithms, deep learning, and so on. And there was a little bit of strategy, there was a little bit of communication, so writing skills and so on. And then in 2020, in the COVID year, this changed completely. Number one skill that people took on our platform across millions of data points is writing, and then there's business strategy, and then skills around self-management. So mindfulness, meditation, gratitude are the kind of skills that people took on our platform. And given this shift that we have seen, that along with learning functional skills and technology skills, we are also seeing people focusing on self-management, on working with other people, on communication. We also hear World Economic Forum talking about how the future is going to be a combination of technology skills and is going to be a combination of human skills as well. And so as we work with Accenture, or as we work with Capgemini, this is what we are taking to them. We are saying that the skills that you're providing to your employees need to be digital and need to be human. And given this context of what we are doing with industry, let me now talk a little bit about what some of the implications from a higher education standpoint might be. And so companies are telling us that the kind of roles that they see being relevant for, let's say, engineering students, just continuing to build on the theme of engineering, is that across disciplines, they're looking for people to come in as having specialized in some of these topics. And these are examples. This is not a comprehensive list by any means. But, computer science, we all understand that specializing in AI or cybersecurity or data science is required. But even in a more traditional stream like mechanical, and I'm a mechanical engineer myself, but, specializing in topics like robotics, additive manufacturing, automation, and so on is what the industry is telling us they're asking of students. And similarly in chemical engineering, in biotechnology, and so on. Now, given that this is some of the new, exciting, almost important career paths that we are seeing emerging for students, the role that I think online learning, the role that blended learning can play is kind of represented on this slide. And so last year we made Coursera for Campus, which is our platform for universities available for free to all colleges and campuses around the world. And we saw great merit in an approach which was a combination of what was happening on campus. So, an engineering student learning at his or her university, but also getting to some learning on the Coursera platform, which is coming from other universities, which is coming from industry partners, and there is hands-on learning as well. And of course, in India, the government of India allows 20% and even 40% now credits to come from MOOC platforms. And this approach we've seen is able to get some of the cutting-edge skills that the industry is looking for. What we've seen with a few campuses is taking content which is also beyond just the boundaries of a university. And let me share that on the next slide. Now, what we've seen is that the areas where some elements of online learning are being adopted is, the core, which is for an engineering student or a business student, a lot of that is possibly being delivered by the faculty of the university. Today, it is being delivered via Zoom classes, online. Tomorrow, it might go back to campus. But many universities are blending and also adding emerging technologies, multidisciplinary learning, which is important as a part of NEP, and also career skills as a part of what platforms like Coursera are providing to their students. And then also hands-on learning, and Dr. Sancheti is here, and he's spoken quite a bit about virtual labs as well. And some of that hands-on learning is being provided by these universities as well. And then last couple of slides that I'll share, companies are telling us that instead of just limiting to certifications, they want to see skill development happening in students. And when we work with companies, you are able to see how skill development is happening for their employees on an online platform. And you'll see on the right, and my apologies for the small font size, but these are the list of skills that their employees or their working professionals might be building. So there's business analyst, there is psychology, there's communication, there's data analysis, and so on. And companies are very keen to see, as students take some of these courses, along with getting certifications, along with getting credits, how are they seeing skill development happening? And then the last thing, because again, this is something which is possible on an online platform, we're also seeing companies being quite interested in seeing who are the top talent in a university, partly from a skill development standpoint, but also benchmarking not just within the university, but outside across the country as well. And I took this example from one of the universities that we're working with, where they said in business analysis, these are our top 10 students, and we benchmark them across the country. And similarly, in a topic like web development, these are the top 10 students, and then they're able to, put these students in front of the employers. So yeah, so that's a little bit, Alistair, of what some of the Industry 4.0 or the double disruption changes that we are seeing as we work with companies. And hopefully some of this is relevant for our conversation as higher education thinks about education 4.0 as well. I'll hand back to you with that.
Great, thank you very much, Raghav. It's always interesting to see the large amount of data you manage to gather around these things and the insights that it brings with it. I'd like to open it up to our university leaders now, if I may, and just ask you about the identifying the skills that you need to create employable graduates, and how you have managed to embed that model of working in your own institutions. Dr. Shukla, could we perhaps come to you first? If you could also tell us just your institution as well, just so people watching on demand will
know. Thank you, Alistair. Very good afternoon to one of all. Identifying the future skills is very important, and actually at our university in 2016, we started a very major project where we looked at whatever the current skills we were imparting to the students, and we were looking at what really the industry is looking. And from there, we started every year doing the skill inventory, that what the new skills are needed by the industry sector-wise. And in 2017, we implemented Education 4.0, which was truly aligned with the industry requirement and also with the emergence of Industry 4.0, and where the focus was the skills like the creative skills, the problem-solving skills, the and communication skills, and looking at those various skills. And we made the complete inventory, and accordingly, the curriculum was designed and developed, bringing the feedback of the stakeholders from the industry, from the recruiters, and accordingly designing the teaching learning strategies, which impacted not only the teaching learning in the class, but it also positively impacted the development of the students. So the skills became the core of the or whole academic philosophy at the university, and that gave a lot of leverage to the student to focus on developing their own curriculum, because we implemented the choice-based graduate system where the students were able to pick up the courses which are relevant to their program and as well as to matching with the career aspiration. And thanks to UGC, because UGC came with that up to 20% of the credit the student can learn through the MOOCs. And that gave also a lot of freedom to the student, that looking at their career aspiration and the kind of the skills are required for that specific career, they were able to pick up the courses from the within the university and from the outside the university, and where we built a very strong relationship with the industry, and where the industry specific skills were being imparted, like Tata Technology have very specific skills which they require for their automobile sector, so they were imparting the courses. RICS, the real estate or the construction industry, has a very specific skills, so they were imparting. So therefore, became our courses become aligned with the industry requirement to specific skills, and that has been the beginning. And when the COVID pandemic came, and since the partnership with the industries was such that even during the COVID pandemic, that learning did not stop. From the next very morning, we were able to move to the online mode of the remote teaching using the various technology platforms and having our whole curriculum online and the e-content. We did not face any problem, and we were able to maintain our academic calendar as per the scheduled calendar and without facing any difficulty. So the skills were the core of everything what we were doing on campus, and which when we moved to remote mode of teaching, and the skills remain the core focus, and that was all aligned with the industry requirements.
Great, thank you very much. Dr. Senchetti, can you tell us a little bit about how you implemented, how you identified skills at SRM and how you embedded that into the curriculum there?
Thank you, Alistair, and thank you to THE as well as Coursera for this opportunity. Madam Shukla has already shared something about the way in which we go about delivering a skill and identifying skills. I will not necessarily focus on all those communication skills or analytical skills or maybe even creative or problem solving skills. Some of the, or maybe design skills also, that is becoming very, very relevant and important. And what we are trying to do with some of these is we are trying to build them on top of the existing curricula. That is the way, because different people's needs are different, and therefore we allow them the choices, and they can develop whatever, wherever they are weak or wherever there is a greater deal of interest. But if I talk of skills in my own way today, I think I'll possibly say that the skills required for all the young graduates or would-be graduates, and since we're talking of Education 4.0, so all the more on that, is that number one, the first skill they require is to learn, relearn, and unlearn all those in whatever cycle, I don't mind, in whatever sequence, I don't mind, but learnability is the most important skill. You have to lose the old unwanted weight and you have to gain something which is more relevant. And if one can develop the ability of learnability, I think the students can do wonders, because they have to survive for a long time between 25 to 75. That is a typical working age I'm considering now in the current context. And in that case, they cannot come to classes and they'll have to do many, many things on their own. So that is number one, learnability. The second skill they have to do is to ability to discern. Today, so much is available on our platter or on offer, and even in Coursera, they'll give you so many courses, as has been said, that you are sometimes confused with the choices where to go and what to go, and you tend to lose time. Or maybe sometimes it's a bit difficult. So making right choices, match your own interest with something, is, I think, once again required. That's another skill, because otherwise people get confused and go in wrong directions, and then once again course corrections. So those are generally not necessarily doing good. So that's another skill, that how to understand yourself, how to map your abilities and interest into something. And the third skill, which I would probably suggest from my side, would be that an ability to course correction. I might have made mistakes. I'm forced because of certain conditions, even if I've not made mistakes, that I was in certain direction, and how to do that course correction. And that would be important in Education 4.0, because Education 4.0, in one sense, gives you anywhere, anytime, any mode, any language, any subject, all those many combinations which are there. And in that, if you have taken something wrong step or wrong direction, how to do the course correction. I think these are the skills which one would require. Of course, when we teach our students through variety of expositions, maybe industry, maybe seminars, maybe special trainings, maybe coachings, maybe field experiences, all those things put together, deliver them these kind of skills. And going ahead, I think those will be important. That is my first take on the skills which are required for future. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Dr. Sancheti. Professor Paralekar, if I could come to you next, I think it's interesting when we speak about the as Dr. Sancheti put it, the learnability and the agility to learn new skills and see it as an ongoing process rather than a one-time change. With in your role as a director at the Go Institute of Management, are you that much closer to industry because of the type of discipline that you are teaching, and that your students, want to learn and have to learn over their time with you?
Yeah, sure. Yes, you're right in saying that, unlike a university that most of my colleagues here represent, since we are limited in to one discipline, and that only to graduate education, I think it becomes a little easier in some ways for us to be able to focus a little bit more narrowly. Of course, there are disadvantages of that. I won't go on to that. Business schools, at least all the leading business schools, employability, part of it gets done because of the way of the structure of how business schools are. So all the good business schools anyways have students. So 70% of the students who come to our school come with prior work experience, not large amount of experience, averaging around 22 months. So they do understand what a work environment is like. Almost all business schools have a built into the curriculum is a internship, and that internship is with internship for which they get paid, and they're working in industries of interest for them. We used to do a 2-month internship, and now for all the new programs that we've launched, we've expanded that from 2 months to 5 months at the request of industry. I thought, just to give the context of the Goa Institute of Management, what we're doing, and then I can tell you why the 2 months to 5 months in employability. For a long time, we ran a general, management program, which is a graduate. In India, we call it a postgraduate program, 2 years full time. And for 250 students that we admit on the program, we have a very large number of people who apply. So something like 12,000 people would apply for 250 seats on the program. It would be very easy for us to double the intake capacity and make it 500 without much of a loss in student quality. That's what faculty are most concerned about. But all the increases that we've done in our intake student has been in new programs which we find are more cutting edge verticals. We do find that business is getting more specialized. With Industry 4.0, things like digital is important. So the digital skills from data science. So we run a full-time 2-year data science program, a management of data science. We just launched this year a new age banking, insurance and financial services program. Though around 30% of our traditional program were working in banking and financial services, when we went and met a lot of senior leaders in banking financial services, they said that there is a tectonic shift in that industry. The skill sets that were required, bankers of the past and bankers of of the current and the future, the skill sets required are completely different. Today they are what you would have never envisioned in the past. Today all bankers are techno bankers. Technology seems to be driving banks out of traditional models that they existed in. And therefore, that's the other domain. And one more domain that we got into, something that you would have traditionally thought far away from disruptive technologies, and that's a healthcare management program. And interestingly, in the healthcare management program, there's a lot of demand for analytics as a skill set. And if you understand the healthcare industry, both on the clinical side as well as on the business side, you would, whether you look at consumer, you look at insurance, you look at whatever aspect of that industry, you find technology is driving it. So from 250 intake capacity to 500 that we went, all the 250 that we added were because we saw there was a change in technology. Over a period of time, what I do see is the general management program will undergo a shift where it is going to be something like a data science driven business. Now, so that's one side. Though I've spoken a lot about technology, just to respond to your question about employability in this changing context. Needless to say, the place where business school was very strongly rooted in was the human skills, right? So the human skills is something. It's not that you're replacing one with the other. The importance of human skills. I was really surprised, and the biggest surprise I had from Raghav's presentation was the major flip from 2019 most kind of coveted programs to 2020. I think that's really interesting that that kind of a mix is there. So I hope I've been able to do justice to your question.
No, that's great. That's it's interesting to hear about the new developments and the new specialties that are emerging, because as you say, as the demand for soft skills and strategic skills increases, it's also growing alongside a list of very, very highly skilled specialties, and it's presenting two challenges I get for curricula, really, because you have to represent both. Dr. Patish, if we could
could I make a quick comment to what Professor Ajit shared as well? So one thing might be helpful to share here from what Professor Ajit shared. We work with like 3,000 companies around the world, and the single largest industry that we work with is financial services, banking and financial services. And as we all know, right, in India for the last 3 years, every 12 months, the HDFC website goes down, the HDFC Bank website goes down, and usually it goes on to the front page of the Times of India. Now, what's interesting is that for the last 2 years that the website has been going down, many industry commentators have been saying that this is not a technology failure only. This is not just a CTO problem. It is a talent failure. It is a CHRO problem as well. And because it is a CHRO problem, I completely agree with what you said, that they're looking for the technical talent to understand the latest and the greatest in technology, but they're looking for their management talent as well to understand digital and data skills as well. And so we're running programs with the likes of Axis Bank and IDFC Bank and ICICI, where we're not building banking skills. We are building technology, data science, and human skills for the bankers of the country. So completely see what you shared happening in the industry as well. And I thought I'll just mention that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's interesting to just to underline how closely the two are linked and increasingly seem to become dependent on one another. Dr. Patish, we come to you next, just because I was wondering about, with DARPA, you're obviously an Institute for Engineering and Technology, so you are producing some of the most in-demand skills, you're training some of the most in-demand skills that there are in the job market. But to that point, have you seen a similar challenge emerge around the need for soft skills, strategic skills, the requirement for graduates to really show things like their problem-solving ability and their communication skills and their critical thinking and everything that goes along with that outside of the knowledge taught for their discipline?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So yes, I have a pretty good experience of last 6 or 7 years since we have been trying to do things a little differently from the way we were doing it like in the past 50, 60 years. See, like everyone else, until about 2014 or 15, we were also what I call as, what most students call as rote learning, content-based teaching, very textbookish. And we, at that point in time, in 2014, decided that we have to now actually do a makeover and move towards experiential, project-led, and outcome-based teaching, right? Now, of course, all these things they are all very wise words, but very difficult to implement when especially we have people who have been teaching like for 20, 30 years, and to make them adjust and make changes in the way teaching and learning pedagogical inputs are to be made is not something which was very, very easy. So we decided that we will use experts to make some changes in the way we teach. So we brought in a professor from University of Waterloo. We hired him as a consultant. This guy is the director of Ideas Clinic in University of Waterloo. And we hired him at Harper for a period of 6 years, where he was asked to spend about 6 months every year for the next 6 years, and establish what we called as an experiential learning center. The idea was straightforward. We wanted to move away from that textbookish content-based learning because students itself have changed. Today's students, if you teach them something which is written directly in the textbook, they would never come to your class. Why would he need to come when the technology is sitting in his hand? In the click of a button, he can see everything that you're probably going to teach him. So unless you give him something different from what is not, or something which is not there in the textbook, you cannot excite him or her to come to the class. So this experiential learning center was set up something like this. So he said, when a student comes in the first year, say in an engineering program, we teach them a little more science, a little more chemistry, physics, mathematics. Now they start to feel, where is engineering in all this, right? Because of course the first year is all build up of what they did in their 11th and 12th, right? And this soon, that enthusiasm of doing things with their own hands, it starts to disappear. So we decided that, in the first year itself, we will start with developing what I call as a design vocabulary for students of various disciplines. Like if a mechanical engineering student comes in, he must start to understand the toolings, the basic, things that we use in mechanical engineering, some measurement. So what we did as an experiment, we bought 50 Honda engines, right? Then we brought them together, 100 students, put 3 students on each of those engines and told them how to open up an engine, right? So we showed them a half-an-hour video, explained to them the concepts of various. They have not done any course until then on an engine, but they were all excited because they were mechanical engineering students. Oh, there's an engine sitting in front of me, right? So we explained to them how to open it up, and then we assembled it back and said, now a new engine is sitting in front of you, rip it apart. The only thing that you need to do is that you must be able to put it back after you have opened it, right? So we gave them 4 hours. The students were so enthusiastic. They were first time seeing all these tools. So somebody picked up a screwdriver, somebody picked up another tool, somebody picked up something else, whatever they can lay their hand on, they picked up, they opened up almost everything out of that engine. And then we said, okay, now you reassemble it, right? Now that was something which was a task. Of course, we gave them help. They were technicians. The good thing was, by the end of those 4 years, they had experienced something with their hands, and they had learned certain design words. When they were kids, they learned every day a few words. In engineering now, first few weeks of their classes, they have now learned the terminology used with various tools that are being used to, say, open up an engine, or the parts that go into an engine, right? We did exactly the same thing in every other program. So a civil engineering student, we asked them to, make a canoe, and we have a pool. We said, okay, now you need to make a concrete canoe and then make it float on water, right? We asked them to make a bridge out of, newspaper reel. So we gave them, okay, this bridge should be able to take a load of about 5 kgs, and what you have is only newspaper reels and tape, right? So you need to design it. They had done no design courses, but still, students used their, they went to the internet, they searched, they found. The excitement was so large that, this program has become such a big hit in Thapar Institute program that now we spend about 3 crores every year just to run an experiential learning center. And the exercises go from semester to semester, they keep going up. Just to give an example, because I am from mechanical engineering, when we asked the students to open up the engine in the first year, what we did in the second year was to pick up a part of that engine and create an engineering drawing out of it, because they were simultaneously doing an engineering drawing course. When they went to the third semester, they were doing a CAD course. So we said, now you build a solid model out of it. In the machine design course, same part, we made them analyze that part, right? In the third year, we made them manufacture that part. Some of the parts could be manufactured. So they went to the workshop. We have a really large workshop. So we helped them to build that workshop. In the last 4 years, we have, of course, provided them certain parts. The students have actually built a functional engine themselves, right? So this is only one example. There is a chair testing machine. There is a CNC machine the students have built up. I'm talking about mechanical engineering. And same way, every other program has very similar experiential learning methodologies, right? Now, what has this done to the students is that, it has brought in that practical component, that hands-on experience that we have been talking about, which is prevalent everywhere, but students are never able to achieve it because our practicals are sometimes very disoriented from the theory, right? What we do in the lab sometimes is not connected to a real-life application, right? Another thing we did, we have a strength of materials course in the first year for everyone. So when the students went to the strength of materials lab, okay, you will probably see a universal testing machine. We said, okay, you will use it later. First, design something yourself in experiential learning mode to how to test the strength of a material. So we said, okay, you please test the strength of, say, a newspaper reel and design a test rig by which you can do it. Students came up with really innovative designs. One student came up with a hanger at the top, newspaper reel rolled down like this, and at the bottom he started to load it with the help of water, right? And as of course it fractured when they actually when they kept loading it, and then they converted into the strength of the material. So very innovative things students keep doing. I'm not saying that we are going to replace the UTM and start doing this kind of a methodology, but we are just asking them to think about how they can apply this knowledge in an engineering field. So this is something which has been very, very successful. It has now taken roots all across in every program. Students are, chemical and mechanical engineering students are right now building batteries for electric car. They said we need this is Punjab, and in Punjab, these Jeeps, the Thar is a very popular thing. So what they said, get us a Thar and we will convert this into an electric vehicle. We couldn't find an old one, so we bought a new Thar last year and gave it to the students. Again, said, go and rip it apart and do whatever you want to do with it. Today, I'm very happy to tell you, a Mahindra new Thar has been converted into an electric vehicle, right, by the students. It may not be the greatest efficiency or something, but the learning has been immense. The students have benefited greatly, and many of these students have found excellent jobs. So I think one of the ways you can probably which will change things in the future, especially in the case of engineering education, is experiential learning, because this learning is lifelong. Everything else probably will be forgotten in times to come.
Right, thank you. It's really interesting to hear all the examples and the innovations and the different ways in which people are learning. I think it will take me a lot longer than 4 years to master some of these skills myself, but it's it seems like it's being very productive. Raghav, to that point, where we've heard about the importance of adopting a more agile mindset, learnability, as Dr. Sanchetti put it, the emergence of new specialties, even at specialist schools such as business institutions, and the benefits of experiential learning as well. Are these all things that can be further strengthened through collaboration with industry and
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say, I think it's been fascinating just listening to everybody and how, each institution has been thinking about their journey when it comes to Education 4.0. And Dr. Ajay spoke about experiential learning, which is quite interesting as well. I think one of the elements that we've seen, which is quite interesting, is many companies who are technology leaders are now increasingly starting to create content on online platforms like Coursera, because they want working professionals, they want students to be able to get exposed to that content. And let me explain a little bit by what I mean. And as I think some of the speakers were talking, I was writing down as a business manager what all softwares I use, right? And I'm not a computer science engineer, but I use Salesforce, I use something called Carry, I use Betterworks, I use Workday, I use Looker, and there are 5 more pieces to that list. Now, and this is a little bit more relevant, I think, for Dr. Ajit as well, that as business managers, many of us are increasingly using software packages. And there is an Accenture study which says that companies are investing billions of dollars around the world and in the country right now on technology, but only 10-15% of that technology investment really gets fully utilized, because you don't really fully understand how to use Salesforce, how to use Workday. You only understand a small part of it. So one of the things that we've seen take off among students in the second half of last year is what we call guided projects. And so what we did was that if you're an engineering student and you want to go and pursue working in data science, you want to acquire the knowledge of Python, but you also need to get the hands-on learning experience of Python. And similarly, if you're studying an MBA and you want to go and learn blockchain, how do you learn the knowledge of blockchain, but also how do you practice in a virtual environment when you need to learn blockchain? And to learn some of these software tools, it's a little challenging, right? Because you firstly need an instructor, secondly need to buy the software, install it, get a data set, and so on and so forth. So we created these virtual programs where you can learn these tools. You can learn as an MBA student blockchain and practice it. And similarly, you can learn Python or you can learn Tableau by applying it in a hands-on environment. And so guided projects is something which is not really experiential learning, but it is experiential to the extent that it is a software tool that you're learning and you're gaining the knowledge and you're gaining the hands-on experience as well. We launched this in the middle of last year, and in about 6 months, 2 million of these guided projects were consumed on our platform, were taken, and 1.8 million out of those 2 million came from students who are in colleges and universities. So I think just kind of building on what I think was shared earlier by both Dr. Ajit and Dr. Ajay, that I think hands-on learning as a broader theme, and within that experiential, of course, is pretty critical, but the ability to bring hands-on learning when it comes to skills of the future using technology, I think is seeing some strong adoption with students as well. At least that's what our experience has been.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to ask the panel particularly about how how interested they are in India's role in international collaboration, and also the recognition of qualifications as as part of a reliable global framework, because we're aware at THE that there's a lot of international interest in the higher education sector in India, partly because of how it's growing and changing, and what the NEP may or may not bring. And there are relationships that India has with places like the UK and France and Morocco, and the Washington Accord for certain undergraduate degrees that are recognised as a benchmark there. Is there a growing need, as India perhaps becomes more international with its higher education offering, that there is a standard or a framework that it can use in order to upskill and reskill its citizens over the course of their working life? Is there a framework that needs to be put in place that is not currently there? And how are the demands changing for students, I suppose, is the biggest question. Dr. Sanchetti, would you like to go first?
Okay. As you are talking about the new framework, and particularly in light of internationalization, I'm not necessarily restricting this answer to the skills only, but it's to anything in education. India has already launched a new framework called ABC, Academic Bank of Credit, which was the work in progress before the policy came. But policy has given it a sound placement in terms of people's mind that something of this nature is going to happen. So India had a very closed door policy for education. Internationalization was very restrictive. And within that, skill was still very, very restricted. Though Government of India, MHRD at that time, now it's Ministry of Education, tried to open it up by doing skills universities, by creating what we call BVOC kind of degrees, B vocational degrees. Not only that, they made a 10-layered structure by which equivalences can be ascertained. And in skill also, one can obtain a PhD. I think that was the epitome of whatever was being said for the skill. But not much was happening. Efforts happened, but it didn't take shape. Now with ABC, everything of this nature is getting amalgamated. I can still get a degree called BSc or BCom or BTech purely through a skills route. I can still get a degree of that nature by doing half of my courses from international institutions, and there'll not be much of restrictions. So that is the kind of framework ABC is. ABC is one which is going to be operated by a separate entity, I suppose. I'll know a little bit about it because I've been working on that. And this separate entity will facilitate certain standardizations which are required, because otherwise the diversity will be too high. And the beauty of it is that it is highly student centric. They can parallelly get educated in 3 institutions simultaneously. 2 of them can be in India, 1 can be international one. They can be taking courses across the domain, management or engineering or medicine or whatever they want. They can make the courses which are vocational skill or maybe design oriented or anything which are there. So every sort of freedom is available, and those credits. So credits will be the new currency of education. And this will give you that you can divide your education into smaller stepping stones rather than just getting into a fixed pipe. So this ABC was something more flexible. You don't have to enter at 0th year and then get out at 3rd year or 4th year. And this flexibility will allow everything which we are talking today, whether they can bring in more practice, they can bring in more diversity in courses, they can do the degree in slow mode or fast mode. For example, in India currently we cannot do an engineering degree in 3 years, less than 4 years, BTech degree. But hopefully this flexibility will be there. So all in all, internationalizations and skill are going to be opened up very soon with this new framework. But then there are more policies which are coming up for blended teaching, learning and all that. So I hope all in all, the base work would be available to Indian students within India and outside also to do very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Shukla, if I come to you next, do you think that the ABC framework provides at least part of a roadmap for how to embed skills in curricula and how to change and modernize teaching after COVID? Oh, you're on mute, I'm afraid.
Thank you. The new education policy which has come with the internationalization is one of the components where the skills also are very important and integral part of new education policy. This is really very forward-looking policy which Government of India has brought, and given the focus is on the learners and on the employability and the economic development. So internationalization, when we talk about this, has really given that how you can have the global education and make the India as a global education hub also. And Professor Sancheti has talked about the academic bank of credits, and which can give the flexibility to the students to learn and pick up the credits from anywhere and make their own program. And also because the Government of India came long time back with the vocational education, and I think now looking at the internationalization, which will give the one side the opportunity to the student to maybe the study abroad or the student exchange, or to pick up the just credits, say that from the Coursera they have picked up the courses and made their program structure, or they have picked up the courses from some other university, maybe because up to 20% of the credit student can even done online and still they can make their programs. So I think it will give a lot of flexibility one side to the students, and the dropout rate, because at the moment in many of the program and the university, the dropout rate is very high. The students leave their studies in between and they are not able to continue. But I think this policy will give a opportunity to the students to, even if they have left the program anywhere, they will be able to earn some certificate, or they will keep that credits in a bank, and later on they can come and join another university, another program, and complete their program subsequently. It will increase the graduation rates of the student, and also it will keep the students the employable, because as the skills keeps on changing, and especially in the industry 4.0 and beyond, the change in the skill requirement will be much faster what has been in the past and so many decades in the century. But now the change in the skill requirement is very, very fast, so the students will be able to pick up the courses, the current courses, for to remain as a employable. And so therefore I think the internationalization and the skill development are giving the more opportunity to the students to learn, and therefore the education institution need to bring the more flexibility in the learning, to make the more multidisciplinary approach to the learning and more experiential learning, where we also talk the project-based learning or the open-ended learning with the problem-solving kind of learning, and building the teams, because one of the very important aspect is going to be whether the people are able to work together or not, and the human skills which is called will be the very important in times to come. And I think that in totality it will give a great opportunity for the education institution as well as the learner, the students, to build their credit and to develop their skills, the futuristic skills for the employability and the gainful engagement in the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Dr. Paralekha, you spoke earlier about the increasing number of specialties that you're witnessing and the demand for them from industry. Does this kind of delivery for both curricula and collaboration with industry, does that stand to be something that you think will help India's own acceleration towards a knowledge-based economy, and that will perhaps also even help it internationally?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would. So one of the things I think, most of the leading leading higher education institutions in India traditionally have been domestically focused, right? And they had a domestic focus. Means the demand for for places on these institutions is kind of unparalleled. Probably China is the only place where you find the demand is like that. So from a demand, financial, sustainability point of view, they didn't need to look elsewhere. What's increasingly happening? So I see that around 20% of my entire alumni base works in some other part of the world, and most of my students who come in and business school, not something I like, but business school is a little bit elitist in the kind of access that it has. Despite being slightly elitist for the kind of students who come in, the international exposure that they have, prior to getting into graduation and prior to work, is very, very limited. Yeah, and therefore, internationalization is something that, today, though we don't need it financially, it's very, very important for, you're not going to have as many, global business leaders coming out of Indian institutions if they don't get global exposure. So, like Professor Shukla just spoke about, getting along in teams. We have a very diverse audience in most of the top schools in the country that compete nationally. You'll have people coming from 27, 28 different states, different language, different family traditions, kind of the gendered roles within the family. However, that's not the same as having international diversity. And I do think, therefore, that international diversity is the reason why a lot of Indian schools are trying to get students coming from other parts of the world. So that more than really looking at the reasons why you have today a lot of European schools looking at international students coming, a lot of times these are financial reasons. Indian schools, they're not financial reasons. For most of the Indian higher ed schools, the reasons are so that it can benefit your existing student base. A lot of business schools that I know had their entire academic structure tuned to the ECTS system, which would facilitate exchange programs. And therefore, it's I think, it's at least 2 decades that I know that we've successfully been running exchange programs where transfer of credit, grade equivalence, and things like that have become relatively easier to be able to do. One last point here is, the fact that we are into these, cutting edge technologies makes it so much more easier for getting. So these are not skills that are limited to a developing country like India. Globally, the demand for all of this is reasonably high. So when they realize that, if you have a vanilla program, the interest in collaboration is relatively lower. Then things like the traditional things like ranking, accreditations, those are things that matter a lot more. But if you have unique specializations, I think that's what makes it makes institutions a lot more attractive for other institutions worldwide to collaborate with. One point I thought I must touch upon. One of the challenges, so Indian institutes don't struggle, I find, as much in the top institutes. They don't struggle as much in terms of having an opportunity for students to go on an exchange and to get some limited exposure internationally. The difficult thing really is to be able to get international students to enroll on your programs. And the reason really is to be able to fit into the kind of competitive space that students are in top institutions, you're competing with the best. So just to give an example, if you're looking at the top 10 students with the highest GMAT scores in, let's say, Kenya, and you want them to come into an Indian school, you've got to give them very generous scholarships, because you're not competing with Indian schools, you're competing with Harvard and Wharton and places like that. The other challenge that we face is our academic calendar is slightly different from the academic calendar that's there in most other parts of the world. And therefore, typically students, when it comes to their application cycles, they expect that they're going to enter in the program in fall and therefore in September. And most Indian schools will start somewhere in July, a couple of months before. And that's a place where we found in the international market it's not only about credit equivalence, but that's one more place we found in some countries that creates a little bit of a challenge. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We're running out of time, but Dr. Peach, if I could just come to you before we wrap up, does this resonate with the same trends that you see in engineering and technology when you're teaching students in that way? Are you dealing with similar challenges?
Is format में ये type करके लो.
Is this question to me?
Yes, sorry.
Yes, of course. So we also made large internationalization efforts in the last few years. And we do run some 2+2 programs with the top universities in the world, and they have been very, very successful. We sent close to 60 to 70 students on degree award programs with, say, Trinity College, with University of New South Wales, University of Queensland, Tel Aviv University, then University of Groningen in Netherlands, and then and some in the US, right? So I think we have benefited immensely from these relationships by what we actually went around and doing with each one of the institutions was the curriculum harmonization, right? And today I can very proudly tell you that our engineering curriculum, with the 7 institutions I just mentioned to you, we have been able to harmonize our curriculum with each one of them, right? So there is a very smooth transfer of credits from Thapar to all these 7 universities, and all of them figure in the top 100, 150 in the world in THE and QS World Ranking. So, this, of course, these 100 students were benefited by going to these places. We ourselves immensely benefited because we invited them to do academic reviews of our program. So now every year we have about every program is academically reviewed, or I won't say reviewed, is reviewed on an audit, but we just call them over to have a look at our laboratory facilities, our curriculum, our capstone projects, and things of those kinds. And then we use those reports to make improvements in the way we offer our programs to the local students, right? So it has immensely helped both sides. So I think internationalization is a must. And whatever efforts the government is making, is doing in this direction, they're all very welcome.
Great, thank you very much. Raghav, I'll come to you just before we finally wrap things up. Does this, from a supplier point of view, does this resonate, this kind of harmonization that people are talking about across international countries and courses? Is this something that you see demand increasing for when you look at how people are using the Coursera platform?
So we've seen a lot of acceleration, I would say, in the last 1.5 years, Alistair. And I think what a number of the panelists have mentioned is something that we are seeing as well, right? Which is universities fundamentally saying that what our students are learning is not coming just from our faculty, but it's coming from a wider ecosystem. Whether that is from industry, the Honda and the Thar examples that Dr. Ajay spoke about, or whether that is coming from a third-party institution. And we are seeing that, right? So at a business school in Mumbai today, students are learning blockchain on Coursera from INSEAD, right? And that kind of a cross-collaboration is happening. We're also seeing Indian institutions authoring content that is then being available to students around the world. So IIT Roorkee, for example, or IIM Calcutta, for example, are authoring content on the Coursera platform, which is now going from India to students and working professionals in other parts of the world. So I would completely say yes to what your question is.
Great, thank you very much. Well, that takes us up to time, so we'll have to end there, I'm afraid. I'm sorry I don't have time to gain some more insights from you. I've certainly learned a lot over the past hour. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Dr. Shukla, Dr. Latish, Dr. Chanteti, Dr. Parkar. It's been really interesting hearing about your experience in your institutions and all the great work that you're doing to help modernize and create new opportunities, you know, for people who work in higher education and also for the students as well. Raghav, Shantanu, thank you very much as well. It was great to hear what Coursera have been what insights you've been mining over the past few months, and it's always growing and changing. So we appreciate the insights that you bring to these discussions as well. So yes, thank you all very much for joining us, and hopefully we can engage with you again in the future.